probably ought to answer two questions, one for those who know me and one for those who don't. For those who know me, no, she doesn't like it. But I'm growing it where I can. And for those who don't know me, I've got some ties, but I don't like them. I've had a good time this week. I've done some repenting. It's always good to repent. I owe a lot to Malcolm. I heard his tapes on the Blood Covenant back in the 70s, early 70s, and he's been used of God to spur me along in the area of grace. To him and to an older brother, older even than Malcolm, Roy Hessian was a mentor of mine back in the early 70s, and I'd never seen a man live in such grace as he, and so I owe a lot to them. But the other day when Malcolm stood up, he started talking about grace, and folks were going wild. I was thinking, I said that. Nobody went wild when I said that. The Lord reminded me it wasn't who said it, it's what's being said. I tell you, I've been sitting over there just bubbling and thanking God that He's getting it through to us. Let me just tell you a couple of things, though you probably ought to know. If you're receiving what God is saying, you don't have any idea of the trouble you're in for. I'm serious. I mean, some of you have been feeling guilty because you hadn't been persecuted enough. You know, you've been wishing you could be persecuted. You apply the truth of grace and you will. Because religion hates it, and we live in a society infected by religion. You don't know how much is in your own mind yet. You'll holler and scream about how good grace is and walk right out of here and live under the law. And to you pastors, God help you if you're going to live by this way. I was going to tell you this, most of your people have been motivated their whole life under law. They've been manipulated, dominated, tricked, controlled from the outside, and now you're going to go home and tell them you're just free to love God, just turn the Holy Ghost loose in you and just do what you want to, and some of them are going to go, thank God I ain't coming to church for a month. And those who've lived with a tithe being a law over their head to do something to please God are going to go, you mean I don't have to tithe? Thank God, I'm going to buy me a boat. And your programs are going to fall apart and your numbers are going to go down. And after about 3 weeks, you're going to say, that was heresy I heard up there. Did that happen to you in Brooklyn, Malcolm? I was sharing in a United Pentecostal church, and I was sharing about grace, and they just received it. They clapped and had a wonderful time, and I didn't know much, but I was sharing what I knew, and so this friend of mine, I didn't even know him at the time, but he called me and asked me to come over and speak to his church. It was a United Pentecostal church that was trying to come out of so much denominationalism, and he said, man, I heard you tape about the rest of God and everything is wonderful, and I want you to come tell my people. So I went over there and I told them everything I knew and some things I suspected, and man, it was wonderful. It was like they were taking a bath, you know, and they were going, yay, yay, and he said, man, this is wonderful. Can you come back this weekend? I said, yeah, I could come back. And so I came back and did 2 more days, and he said, could you come back in a few weeks for a Sunday? And you know, I was having to make up stuff by now, but I was telling them everything that I knew about the grace of God and the liberty of God, and I shared it all with them, and the pastor said, this changed my life. This is wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful. And so he quit doing the things that was motivated out of trying to please God, you know, trying to do something. He just quit, and his people started quitting. And I testify to you today that church is now no longer in existence. And really, I mean, when you know, some of them, they had, you can't understand all the law they were under, but I mean, it was tough. And they were having to do everything. And so many of them went through that lag time, the time between when you're motivated from the outside and you're motivated from the inside. And when you've been motivated and controlled and manipulated and pushed and shoved and controlled by guilt and by acceptance and all of that for a long time, and somebody says you don't have to anymore, there's a better way, there sometimes is a lag time from the time that pressure takes off and this one comes in. And in their lag time, they had so much debt and everything over the church that they just had to quit, had to sell the buildings out of existence. Now, I'm not prophesying that over you. I just want you to know what you're getting into. Jesus' persecution came over the fact that he preached grace. He loved sinners. He didn't make distinctions. But it's still the best way. I mean, after it dies, raise up another one. The greatest thing could happen to some churches, they die. Well, they already dead. Bury them. Just bury them. You ought to bury the dead. I mean, anything that's worth dying is, if it's worth living and it dies, you ought to have the respect for it to bury it. I mean, Jehu had enough respect for Jezebel to try to bury him. He got out there and all he could find was the palms of her hand and the soles of her feet. But at least he tried to bury it. I'm amazed how we won't bury anything, just drag it. I know you're tired of living under all that pressure. I can just feel you breathe, and some of you are afraid to sigh. I could feel it. I mean, really, I could feel it. It's like you're going, you want to go take a deep breath. It's like, if I do, I'm buying this. And you're afraid, if I do this, I'm liable to run off and do something terrible. I mean, you take these shackles that have clothed me off me. I'm liable to do something awful. Well, let me just give you one word of encouragement. Love will make you holier than law. I mean, you're going to have to decide one way what you're going to trust. And this law stuff, I mean, you stick a law over your head and you'll try your best to break it. Paul said, I didn't even want some stuff till the law said, don't want it, and then I wanted it. Now, I'm going to take a chance here. So I'll go ahead and apologize. Some of you think it's crass, but it's so wonderful in my spirit. I was sitting by a proud grandmother not long ago, a friend of mine. Met her in the airport, and we were talking for a little while, and she was telling me about her grandson. And many of you can identify. I can identify with this. When we had our kids, I wanted my kids to be holy, bless God. I mean, from the time they got here, I wanted them to be holy. I prayed over them before they got here. You know, if I'd have known more, I'd have done more when they got here. And she was telling me about her grandson and how their parents wanted him to be so perfect, so wonderful. And so they took him over to some friend's house, and they told him, now you be nice. Remember what you've been told. You sit still. And so he went over and he sat on the couch. And he's just 3 years old. And he tried to act like an adult. And he was just real nice. And he held it. And finally there came a kind of a break in the action. And he stood up, stretched himself out, and said, pee, 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 poo, poo, and I pick my nose every day. Now, does anybody in here wonder what his parents had told him was his concept of holiness and righteousness? There's some of you who've been wanting to do that your whole life. Maybe we all just take the time and do it. Just everybody. I mean, if that's all it takes to cleanse your soul, get on with it. I watch pastors. You know, we do a terrible thing to pastors. We say to a pastor now, you not only must keep all the laws that everybody else keeps, but because you're a pastor and a leader and all that, you got to keep some others. And a man who hasn't learned to walk in the grace of God, he will break those others just because it's the nature of the thing. So you do a terrible thing and say, now listen, you can't even, you can't even. So he goes and does all that. It's just in there. Well, we've been hearing a lot of things. I think I sense in your spirit that you're kind of ready to do something. Now you don't know what to do. Man, yesterday I got pumped up, going to go win the world. There's a big harvest, and then come in here this morning. I don't know if I do anything. Will I be living up to the law? And golly, what do I do? Don't know whether to read my Bible or not, or pray. Disciples asked Jesus one time, said, they saw him doing all this wonderful stuff, and they said, what can we do to do the works of God? And I know they thought he was going to give them a formula, do this, pray this many hours a day, read the Old Testament scriptures, memorize it, fast on Fridays, eat fish on Mondays, whatever. They said, what can we do to do the works of God? Jesus said, believe on him whom God has sent. Oh, yeah, okay, and then what? Jesus is already walking on down the road. That's end of conversation. That's it. Believe on him whom the Father has sent. Listen, in Western civilization, we can't handle that. No, we're pragmatists. We're the Yankee. We can get it done. And when we're challenged, hey, baby, watch out. We're going to do it. And even this thing about grace of God. Bless God, I'm going to get great. I'm going to rest. I am going to rest. Bless God, I'm going to rest. I am going to rest. I'm going to rest. I'm going to rest, bless God. I'm just going to rest, bless God. I'm just going to rest. I'm resting in Jesus. I mean, we take that passage over there in the King James. It says, strive to enter the rest. We take that literally. Strive to enter the rest. It means make it your priority. That's the big deal. You rest. Resting folks bug other folks. Have you noticed that? I mean, you've got to do something. Well, what do? You believe. I love what the passage James was preaching from last night, Acts 1. Jesus said, I'll give you a command and a couple of promises. Command is this: wait till you be endued with power. Promise is, you shall receive power and you shall be witnesses. We turn them around. We turn the promises into commands and the commands into promises. Wait. Just wait till you see power. We've been waiting too long. And that's my problem now. I've been waiting. I need to get active. Okay, get active. Believe God. Just believe God. Jesus said this, verily, verily, I say unto you, the works that I do shall you do also, and even greater works than these shall you do, because I go unto the Father. And it's wonderful if you won't stop reading until the ands are over, see? And whatever you ask in my name, the Father will do it. He not only tells you to go do mighty works, he tells you how you do it. You ask in Jesus' name. Now I understand the mentality, we need to do more than pray, but I'm not so sure. Because when you pray in faith, all kind of wonderful things happen. I mean, when you really believe, real belief is it's just getting into the flow with God. I mean, if it's real prayer, if it's not prayer to gain God's acceptance or prayer to bargain with God, if it's real prayer, if it's real communion, you just become a part of the heart of God when you pray. And then what you do is not work. It's not faith and works. It's just faith that works. So some of you have got a dichotomy between grace and faith. Let me tell you, it says, for by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. What's the that? All of it. Grace and faith and salvation. It's all. That not of yourselves. It's a gift of God. See, some of you have been thinking, I got to go believe. You're getting a hernia trying to believe. Tell you about faith. Faith's so wonderful. You know what it is? Faith is just a response inside of you to God's promise. God starts it all. It's so wonderful. That's how you can rest. Here's how I began to see it. When I understood that God is in charge of the whole deal and He initiates everything, He thought this thing up. He's got it all concluded. He knows how it's all going to operate. He's let me in on it. He put Himself inside of me, and He initiates everything, and all I get to do is respond. It was gospel to me when I heard Jesus say, I don't do anything until I see my Father do it. I loved it because Jesus didn't walk around with the burden of the world on His shoulders going, I've got to do all. No, it's just like, well, it's going to be fun today. Whatever the Father wants me to do, I'll do it. See, what Jesus was saying was nothing in my life is self-initiatory. Everything that happens in my life, the Father starts it and I just cooperate. If I see Him do something, I just do it. If He says something, I say it. Hey, you don't have to worry about it. He said, I got this big speech to make. I don't mean don't prepare and whatever, but just say what the Father says. It's responding. That's the way faith is. Faith is just responding to God. Now, we've lived through an era where faith has been made a big deal of, and a lot of things that were said about faith was true, but in our mentality of works, in our mentality of performance, we've turned faith into a formula. You got to say it a certain way, and it's already been referred to many times, but the positive confession, afraid to say it, afraid to tell the truth, because you got to say it, you got to confess, you got to do this and that, the other. Faith is so simple. It's just real simple. It's just God speaks to you personally and you trust Him. It's not trying to believe all the propositions of God. It's just God says, Dudley, I promise you this. And you go, amen, thank you. And then you walk on in the expectancy of it, and then living with the reality of that, you cooperate with it. When God said to Abraham, you're going to have kids, he said, come on, Sarah, let's go to the beach. Luke chapter 18. He was telling them a parable, verse 1, to show that at all times they ought to pray and not to lose heart. By the way, when you read a verse like that, it tells you why Jesus told the parable. Don't get so caught up in the parable you forget why he taught it. The end result here is so that you ought to always pray and not lose heart. There was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God and did not respect man, and there was a widow in that city, and she kept coming to him saying, give me legal protection from my opponent. And for a while he was unwilling, but afterward he said to himself, even though I do not fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow bothers me, I will give her legal protection, lest by continually coming she wear me out. And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. Now shall not God bring about justice for his elect who cry to him day and night, and will he delay long over them? I tell you that he will bring about justice for them speedily. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? I want you to notice what it does not say. It doesn't say when the Son of Man comes, will he find what faith produces on the earth. Now, hold on. Let me say this. Real faith does work. When there's real faith, there is produce. Faith works. If it doesn't work, it's not faith. But it's not faith plus works. It's faith that causes God to intervene into the situation and produce happens. And when faith works, it's always supernatural work. When we believe, God works. Okay, can I put it like that? And when God works, he works through folks sometimes. But we get so caught up in, yeah, but we got to get the works. If we don't get the produce, then could we just back off just a little bit for this morning and just say, well, no, let's get the faith down right, okay? And if you get the faith down right, I will guarantee you, God guarantees you the works will be there. But it says when the Son of Man comes, there'll be one thing he'll be looking for. Will I find somebody still believing? He didn't say, I'm going to come and look in your garage and see how many Mercedes you've trusted me for. I'm not going to come and look in your diary and see how many hours you spend in prayer. I'm not going to find out how many sick people you raised up. I'm not going to look for how many people you won to the Lord. I'm not going to look at how many churches you built. I'm not looking for all the produce. When I get back, I just wonder, will I find somebody still believing? Because after all, that is the work of God. What Jesus said. I want you just to hear something very simple today, and that's this. Faith itself is more important than what's apparent that it produces. In other words, what it produces at any given time. Faith itself is more important to God than its produce. Because, see, we have this tough time of being able to, we look at something, and if it's not producing now, it's like, that's no good. You know, Jesus himself said that, he said, I'm the vine, you're the branches, my Father is the husbandman, and he prunes all the branches. Do you know that when you prune a branch, it doesn't look real fruitful? And sometimes God prunes me. If you walk by and look at me when God's pruning me, you're going to go, yuck. There's no fruit on Dudley. I'm being pruned. Give me a little chance, would you? Look at me over the long haul, not just on some specific time. Now, your faith, just the essence of your faith, just the simplicity of your faith, just your trusting God is more important than what it produces. So I want to take that heavy weight off your shoulders right now. At least for the next 10 minutes, you don't have to produce anything. Okay? Now with that off your shoulders, could we just learn how to receive this gift of faith, how to appropriate this thing that's already been given to us, this grace and faith that's already ours, it's already finished in Jesus. I will tell you this. I believe we're walking in some days, and we'll continue to walk in them for a period while faith is being perfected. while faith is being purified. We've heard so much stuff on faith, and I bless God for everybody that's ever spoken about it, but I've heard more formulas on faith, more stuff about faith, more if you'll do this about faith, that it is really confusing. And I see folks getting all bound up, and they feel terrible because they can't trust God enough to heal grandma, and they can't trust God enough to get something changed, and they're all bound up, and they're working at their faith, and that hurts me, and I don't want you to ever do it again. I mean, I wish I could go and scoop it out of your heart and say, don't you ever let faith become a burden to you again. Faith is precious. It's something God put in your inside. Faith is something that came out of the heart of God. God is faithful. That means He's full of faith. And when you get faith, you got something right out of God's heart because He lives in you. And you're simply expressing something God does. And God doesn't strive, and He doesn't work with labor and sweat coming down His forehead. God is at ease. He sat down after He created everything, and He sat down because He was through. And that's true faith. If you're not resting, you're not believing. I used to say, well, I'm trying to trust. That's funny. Trying to trust. Try that out on your wife. Just walk into her and say, honey, I'm trying to trust you. And then run. Trying to trust me? What's wrong with me? Why can't you trust me? What have I done to betray you? Why don't you trust me? You don't want to get into all that stuff. I thought I was impressing God one morning. God, I'm trying to trust you. He wasn't impressed. His character is flawless. You can trust Him. Well, God's trying to define reality to us. God's trying. God didn't try either. He just does. But he's getting it through to us, trying to find reality to us in the sense. Do you know what the real battle for all of us is? We talked about the warfare. And by the way, let me recommend a book. I'm not going to get around to getting to talk about some of the principalities and stuff that you're going to face when you go up there. Go out there to get the harvest. The best book, I'll just go ahead and say, the best book I've ever read on warfare. I've even read one of my own, and this is still the best book I've ever read on warfare. It's called Three Battlegrounds by Francis Frangipane. I recommend it. Anyway, in that book, he talks about, and there's some out there in the bookstore, he talks about the real battle. The real battle is over reality. Who determines reality? Is what God says real, or do you listen to what the illusionists say? The illusionist is the devil. The devil is the great illusionist. He creates or perverts creation to paint this beautiful picture and says that's reality, and when you believe it, you're in bondage. The moment you believe anything other than truth, you just walk in bondage. Because Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And so when you believe in truth, then you're walking in freedom. And all your strongholds can fall when you get rid of your deceptions, when you get rid of your lies. And so there's a battle over reality. That's where the battle is in your own mind. When you can believe the truth, you're going to be free. You believe the truth about the grace of God, the sovereignty of God, the love of God. It frees you up. As long as you believe in a lie, you're in bondage. So why do you want to hold on to that stuff? Why do I want to hold on? I don't know. I just want to turn it all loose and just get the truth. Reality the way God defines it. Now, the devil has a lot of stuff. The devil accuses and deceives. That's really all he can do. Do you know that? He accuses and he deceives. And he gets us doing his same work. Have you ever thought about this? There are only two ministries going on in the whole universe right now. There's a ministry of the devil and there's a ministry of Jesus. What's Jesus doing right now? Excuse me, what's he doing right now? He's interceding. What's the devil doing right now? He's accusing. Francis' definition of a gap, he talks about a man standing in a gap. His definition of a gap is this. A gap is the difference in the way things are and the way things ought to be. That's kind of simple. I like that. We think we're really something because we can see gaps. We go into church and go, everything's not like it ought to be in here. Something's wrong. I knew that when I was lost. We think we're really something. It's a big scoop. Something's wrong in that man's life. Big deal. What do you do when you see a gap? You only got two choices. When you see a gap in a church, in a nation, in a person's life, in your own life, whatever, you can do one. You can start accusing, or you can start interceding. That's the only option. Now, we accuse in some real religious ways. You say, well, I'm not just going to accuse, I'm just asking discerning questions. And you can do that. You can do that. But we ask some doozies. My daughter and I were laughing one night. We got to talking about all the stupid questions that parents ask kids. Like this. Do you want a spanking? You expect your kid to go, yes, thank you, I was hoping you would ask. Or this one, are you crazy? Yes, I've been that way several days, and I was hoping you would notice. Now, you can think of the accusing ways you ask questions. Well, we accuse one another. Accuse one. Sometimes prayer meetings are nothing but accusing meetings. Have you ever noticed that? We just get in there and accuse everybody to everybody. Interceding. God's going to have to show you that. I don't have time to go into that, but it's a part of this whole thing of just praying. I mean, believing God. You say, I've got to change that situation. No. What's the work of God? To believe. So you can intercede. You say, but don't you have to get involved? Well, you get to intercede and you are involved. There's a fear that's over us that we're afraid to pray because we're afraid if we pray, God will have us get in there. Because I've heard so many of these sermons, you start praying for somebody to go to Africa and God will call you. I said, well, you can bet your bottom lip I'm not praying to go. Because God will... Don't let that scare you. I fought that battle this past week. I read the newspaper one morning. It's talking about all the Vietnamese gangs around here and how they were terrorizing their own communities in the whole area in Fort Worth. And it was on the front page of the paper. I'm learning how to take the paper and use it for fodder for intercession. If you read the paper, you'll find out what's going on down here. You'll see the gaps. Instead of reading the paper and going, can you believe the world's going to hell and them politicians ain't doing nothing? I ain't voting for that sucker next time. Well, that's all right, but you can do more than that. God shows you a gap on the front page of the paper every morning. There's a gap there. So I read that and I said, God, I'm so sorry about these Vietnamese kids. They've grown up and all they've ever done is rob and they don't know anything. And my heart was broken for them. And then the devil said to me, if you pray for them, you'll be down on the streets and your ministry will be to Vietnamese kids. And I went, I ain't praying. I'm not ready to get on the streets. I can't speak Vietnamese, don't look like one. I'm not doing it. Now that's a lie. That is not reality. That's a lie. See, the devil will back you off from that stuff. Let me tell you something. You pray, you intercede, and if God does want you to be in it, He will speak in your heart, and it will be faith, and you will reach out in faith and response and saying, oh, Lord, can I, would you let me? Nobody will then come along and say, oh, he's having to go down there. No, he's getting to. But I'm amazed at how many things the Lord lets you pray for that you don't ever get to necessarily get personally involved. See, that's that old work mentality. I've got to do it. If it's going to get done, I've got to do it. Little hen, what was her name? Well, forget it. I forgot it. Little Henny Penny. Little Henny Penny. No, I ain't got time for you to laugh like that. Sorry. Let me tell you something else the devil will do. One of his illusions. The devil, since the beginning of time, since the Garden of Eden, the devil tries to indict you for not being God. He offered that, He said, if you will do what I say, if you'll eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. Now, he offered that, and man fell for it. And so ever since then, he indicts you for not being like God. He comes along and asks you questions and expects you to answer them, questions that only God knows. Like, why do bad things happen to godly people? And we go, I don't know. I ought to know that. I ought to know that. Why do I don't know. You're not supposed to know. You're not God. People come up to me and say, your brother Dudley, y'all in this, y'all believe in this healing stuff, don't you? You bet. Well, Uncle Frank was the finest man in the church, and he loved God, and he got cancer, and we prayed and anointed him with oil and everything, and we took him to all those meetings y'all went to, and he died. Okay? Well, I'm sorry. What? Well, why did he? Oh, God. God, I'm sorry. I believe you heal. I'm sorry I did all this. God, no, man, I don't know. I'm really sorry Uncle Frank died. But if he's Christian, I'm glad he died. I mean, you know, I don't mean I'm glad he died. I'm glad he's in heaven. I don't mean to oversimplify, but why do you keep getting indicted for not knowing things you're not supposed to know? Some of you are going to have some questions about the grace of God. Well, if you do this, if you do that, well, won't that? I don't know. That's a hard phrase to say. I know it's tough. You ought to practice it sometime. Sometimes you're out mowing the lawn, just go, I don't know. I don't know. Just practice it. I don't know. I don't know. Stand in front of a mirror and go, I don't know. You say, but that scripture says always be willing to give an answer. No, it says always be given an answer for the faith that's in you. Say, I don't know, but I'm still believing. Did you see here recently where the astronomers had discovered this wall out in the universe that they didn't know was there before? Of course, you can understand them losing something little like that. It's only 300 million light years by 500 million light years by 12 million light years. Just a little old block out there. They just found that sucker. I mean, they just found it the other day. It's been floating around out there. 300 million light years. You know how far that is? That's big. And the scientists said, you know, we're going to have to reevaluate this creation stuff. We don't understand this. Well, I read in a book by Philip Yancey, Disappointment with God. It's a wonderful book. Anyway, he was telling about an astronomer who just in the last year had discovered this planet, or one night he was watching through his telescope and he saw this explosion in a planet that was 177,000 light years away. Oh, it was a giant explosion. This was a big event. And he said the explosion was something equal to all the energy that the sun releases in a year's time or something like that. I mean, it was a big deal. And it was a planet that was 177,000 light years away. I got to think about that. You know, Texas is big, and it's a long way to El Paso. That's about as far as I can think. I mean, it'll wear you out to go to El Paso. 177,000 light years. Light travels at the speed of 186,000 miles per second. How far do you figure it can travel in a minute? We'll multiply it by 60. How far do you figure light travels in a year? Long way. And then 177,000 years, and that's how far that star is. I'm gonna get. My son figured it out for me. It's, I didn't even know there were numbers like this. I thought there was really a zillion. I said, David, is that a zillion? He said, Daddy, there is no zillion. I don't work in these figures real often. Let me tell you how far it is. It's 1 quintillion, 38 quadrillion, 228 trillion, 192 billion miles away. That's a long way. In Isaiah 40 it says, God measured the universe in a span. You know how far a span is? Between that finger and that finger. God, somebody says to God, how big is the universe? He said, about that big. And then I get down on myself because I can't figure out why I believe today and it didn't happen by 5 o'clock this afternoon. And I prayed for something to happen last week and it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I started praying for so-and-so 5 years ago and it hasn't changed. I started praying for our city and all the walls haven't come down yet. And I started praying for our church and it's not perfect yet. How long have you been praying? 5 years. Just fit it in. By faith and patience they inherit the promises. Can I tell you something? If God promised it, it's going to happen. It will happen. Everything He ever said is going to happen, folks. You say, but I didn't get to see it in my lifetime. Well, gird up your loins and rejoice anyway. Because what He said was going to happen. He said that there was going to come a Messiah. He said there was going to be a kingdom. And He said, I've got a special people and I'm going to bless them. And he proved it for a while. It looked like one day He just stopped. I mean, there came the day when God stopped speaking. Between the time of the Old Testament and the New Testament was 400 silent years. 400 years when there was no word from heaven, no prophets. 400 years. Generations grew up. They'd read all about the promises God made to Abraham. How I'm going to bless you and make you a nation that's going to cover the earth. Your children are going to be like the sands of the sea. I'm going to look after you. And they'd read that and they'd go, where? 400 silent years. And then one day, out by the Jordan River, this funny looking guy, leather girdle and locust legs sticking out the corner of his mouth. Stands up and says, change your thinking because the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Not many people knew it, but God had spoken again. And it wasn't long before one day a man comes walking out there and John the Baptist points at him and said, there he is. Look, open your eyes. There is the Lamb of God. 400 silent years, but God kept His word. He didn't forget because it fits in there. No big deal for Him. God made you a promise. It hadn't come true yet. You keep believing. You stay with it. Don't you let the insinuations of the devil, the indictments of the devil, the man who's the one who's creating the illusions before you, don't believe it. Believe the truth. Stay with the truth. It'll set you free. Well, I got to quit, but do you like the book of Job? Some of you call him Job. I tell you, it's a job to read Job if you don't understand. I used to hate to read through the Bible because you got to go through Job. And everything I read, God makes me live. And I thought, oh, I don't want to read Job. I don't know why people make the book of Job so tough. If you read the first few pages, it helps you. You get to see what's going on, what's causing all the stuff down there. People read the book of Job and get all frustrated. I just don't understand how evil and good work in the land. I was talking about, well, you look at Job. He has all this trouble. And his friends come to him and they say, now, Job, it's the way the man's mind thinks, now see. Job, you are having trouble because you have sinned. And Job goes, no, you don't understand. See, I hadn't sinned. The audacity, they said. Job, do you understand the eternal principle of God? When you do good, you get blessed, and when you do bad, you get cursed. Yes. Are you being blessed or cursed? That's one of those accusing questions. Job said, I understand, but see, I hadn't, I'm right with God. Okay, Job, just think about it like this. You're sitting out here in an ash heap, scraping yourself with a potsherd. Does it look to you like your faith is working? When you believe right, good things happen. Are good things happening to you or bad things? Looks kind of bad right now. Right, think about it, Job, think about it. What does that tell you? Job said, I know what you're saying. You're saying I am being punished because I'm evil, but I'm telling you, I'm not evil. So then another one comes along. Job, the Word of God says that God blesses the humble. He opposes the proud. Are you being blessed or opposed? Well, Job, I know, I hear you. Believe me, I hear you, but I'm right with God. 42 chapters of this. Of man's mind from every angle coming to try to explain why a man who's right with God is sitting in the middle of an ash heap scraping himself with a potsherd. Job says, I know it don't look good. I know this is not the kind of lifestyle everybody's going for. But I can't quit trusting you. I just can't quit believing you. His wife said, curse God and die. He said, I can't. I just can't. Well, it says to me something about faith. Let me tell you something about faith, folks. It's a gift of God. It's eternal. It says over in 1 Corinthians 13, these three things abide. Faith, hope, and love. You can't kill them. You can't eradicate them because they didn't come from you. They came from God. It's a gift of God. It's part of God's heart. It's part of His nature. You believe because you have God in you. And He's faithful. He is faith. Jesus has been made unto us our faith, our sanctification, our righteousness, our wisdom. I love the first part of Job there. It helps you understand the book. I have people coming up to me and saying, Brother Dudley, see, you don't quite understand. Let me help you understand the book of Job. You see, Brother Dudley, what happened to Job is because it says over there in the early part that what he feared, see, he feared that this, and when you fear, you open the door to the devil. And when you open the door, the devil comes in here. And so the devil did all that to Job because he feared. I've heard that in many different angles. And if that's your view, I'm sorry. I read something else. I read the first couple of chapters where God and the devil were talking, and God brought his name up, not the devil. God said, have you noticed, my man Job, how there's nothing like him on the face of the earth? The devil said, yeah, I've noticed that. But see, the reason he is serving you is because of what his faith produces. He's believing you because you bless him. Take away the blessings and you'll destroy his faith. God said, I bet you. Well, it's not exactly what he said, but it's close. But you need to get the impact of that. You know what God said? He said, I'll bet my universe on the faith in that man's heart. You can't make him quit believing me. You can take away everything and he'll still believing me because it didn't come out of him, it came out of me. Hey, folks, I got some good news for you. You don't have to protect your faith anymore. It'll protect you. You don't have to go around kind of defensive like, oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed that I believe. No, man, just keep believing. And when you don't know if you believe or not, it's okay to tell God. Job did. He said, God, don't quite understand this. Doesn't look right to me. I think you're not looking at things right. God, if you would give me an opportunity to debate you, I mean, you know, really, I'm not mad or anything, but if you would just let me present my case in an open forum, you understand? I think if you ever saw it kind of the way I'm seeing it, that you do things a little different. That's what he said. God said, okay, all right. I love it. God didn't go, talk to me like that, would you? God said, okay, my friend Job, let's have a debate. I would love to debate you. I'll give you a chance to say everything you want to say. But there's a couple of questions I want to ask you before we start. Where were you when I flung the star? I don't remember seeing you there. I'm sure you were there because you understand all this. And when I pushed the mountains up and hollowed out the sea, and I put it into the animals to calve at the right time, and I caused the rain, where were you, Job? Job says, I don't think I want to debate. I've changed my mind. Now, I love that about Job. Job was willing to expose his doubts. He said, I know God, and I know he won't mind. I'm going to tell him how I feel. So you can, faith, real faith, is able to express its doubts, to express your heart, to just lay it all out there before God and let God sort it out. You don't have to protect your faith like, oh, I could never admit that I'm down, that I got doubts, that I got fears. You thought God didn't know? You thought you were going to surprise him? It's okay. You can express your fears. All the mystery of relating to the Father. Well, he said, what are you trying to say to us? I'm trying to say to you, if you'll just relax a little bit in what God's already done in you and realize God has deposited his faith in you, and I'm going to go ahead and answer the question for you. When the Son of Man gets back, he will find faith on the earth. He will find faith on the earth. You may be sitting in the middle of an ash heap scraping yourself with a potser. And the whole rest of the world going, aha, it ain't working so good. And you're going, I still trust you, Father. I still trust you. Can't quit. Just trust you. You don't have to understand it to make it work. I don't understand prayer, do you? I mean, give me a break. The eternal sovereign God who started all this stuff and already has a fixed end and worked it all out and knows everything and got it all working together. And then he says to me, now, Dudley, ask whatever you desire, and I'm going to do it. How does that work? Number one, how does he hear us all at the same time? And then how does he get it all straightened out? I mean, what if I'm praying one thing and you're praying another thing over here, and no way I can see how they fit? How does that work? Little old pea-brain like me asking God to do stuff and then expecting the God of this universe to respond to my prayer. I don't understand that. Well, somebody asked me if I'd tell a dog story, so here goes. I was listening to Fifi and Charlie talk one day. Fifi's a poodle and Charlie's a bulldog. Fifi said, my wife thinks I really do listen to dogs talk. I come in and telling her what the dogs say and what they think and all that kind of stuff. So I think like a dog. And Fifi and Charlie were talking, and Fifi said to Charlie, you know what, Charlie? I can open the door to the big house. Charlie said, you talking about up there where the master lives? Yeah. He said, you can't either. Oh, yes, I can, Fifi said. No, you can't, Charlie said. It doesn't make a lick of sense. You're living in delusion. Setting yourself up for a big fall, believe stuff like that. No way you can open the door of the big house. Number one, you can't reach the handle. Number two, if you got there, you couldn't turn it. Number three, it stays locked and you don't have a key. Be that as it may, Fifi said, I can open the door to the big house. And I just go in and have the best time. He said, you're living a lie, Fifi. There's no use in setting yourself up like that kind of stuff. Now, you can't open the door, you understand. I can, Fifi said. How? Said Charlie. All I know, Fifi said, is when I scratch, it opens.